Go.
Welcome back to Close to Home Saturday Sampler Block of the Month for October of 2020. This month, for October, we're going to be making this block using the cat's cradle tool, the small flying geese ruler, and of course some very basic half square triangles. Okay, so to get started, we should look at our cutting chart. And the cutting for the cream, you might want to pause your video so you can get a copy of this. But your cream is going to be cut into a 3 1/4 inch strip, 2 of them, and then subcut into 2 1/4 inch rectangles. The rest of your strip, you have a 2, 2, 2, 2, and 2, because you need a total of 20 2-inch squares. And the last section of your cream, I would cut it 5 inches wide, take off a 4 1/2 inch square, and then cut 4 2 1/2 inch squares. All right? The green, very simple. You're going to cut a 5 1/2 by 4 inch rectangles. You'll need 4 of those. And the orange, you're going to cut a 2 1/4, a 2 1/4. These are all squares. And then you're just going to subcut those strips into 2 1/4 squares. And then the last strip you're going to get out of the orange, you need 4 2 1/2 inch squares. And the rest are in the cutting instructions. You need 1 purple, you need 1 red, for instance, for the center. So those are very simple to cut. So we're going to start off with these units. This is a 4 patch, which includes 2 half square triangles. And we're going to start with those. I'm just going to show you very quickly that we need, they're over cut, so we're going to have to trim those down. So to start with our half square triangles, you're going to cut the number needed, and they're the 2 1/2 inch squares. You put the 2 1/2 inch squares together, you draw your line, you sew on either sides of the line, and then you cut on the line. When you press those open toward the orange, you're going to get 2 units that look like this. However, these are not a 2 inch unfinished or a 1 1/2 finish is what we're going to be looking for. So what we need to do is cut these down to 2 inches. So let me grab my ruler real quick and I'll just show you how to do that. Oh, here? Sure. We'll grab it. Excuse me. So I'm going to get a little oversized, my half square triangles that are oversized. Take any creative grid ruler, and we're looking for the sides that have the 1 inch and the 1 inch. Don't use the sides that have the 1/2 inch markings on them, okay? We're going to go to the side that has the 1 inch. All we're doing is we're looking for that 45-degree line that goes right into the corner of our creative grid ruler. That line gets placed on our sew line. All right, just like so. And you want to make sure that you're placing this on that line so that you have a little extra on the 2, so that when you turn it, you can have enough to trim. So basically, we're just going to trim this down to a 2 inch square. So we're going to take those 2, and I know the corner comes right into my corner of my ruler. Rotate it, put that line on the ruler right back on the seam, measure it up with our 2, and now we can trim this. So you need to trim all your half square triangles down to 2 inches. The next shape we're going to talk about, once you get your 2 inch half square triangles, you're going to sew those to the 2 inch creams to make a 4 patch. And you will need 4 of those 4 patches. Excuse me. Okay, simple 4 patch. The next thing we've already talked about, and I'm just going to go through this really fast, it's the small flying geese ruler. We did the flying geese back in March. Same size, same ruler, everything. we start with a 6-inch square and a 4.5-inch cream. Okay? 6 being the purple, 4.5 being the cream. You're going to go ahead and draw your line, sew on either side of the line, and then you're going to trim it on the line. When you're done with this, you're going to press these toward the purple, and that's what I have here. Excuse me. Press this toward the purple. You're going to line up the cream with the purple and the purple with the cream. So I'm just putting opposite colors in the corners. You're going to draw another line, sew on either side of that line. Excuse me. Trim it. And then we're going to use our small flying geese ruler to cut out our shapes. And again, you're going to get 2 flying geese out of this half. Sorry, out of this half. Okay. So just a quick reminder, we did them in March. You can go back to the directions in March. The directions will be in your kit again, once again, for the flying geese. Once you're done with your flying geese units, you can go ahead and put 2 outside pieces, 2-inch squares, on 2 of these. So that'll be, because we're trying to make a center unit out of those flying geese. So it's going to go square, flying geese, square. It's going to go flying geese with your red 3-inch or 3.5 cut square with another flying geese, and we're just going to build this little 9 patch here, and that's going to be our center. So far we have our 4 corners, and we have our large centerpiece with flying geese. The next unit I want to show you, and I'm going to go through it all, is the cat's cradle. We've done this in past years, but this is just a refresher. Some cat's cradles have a complete for orange square here. So we've taken this one step farther and we've put another piece here and drawn our line and sewed, which I will show you that. So this is our cat's cradle right in this little shape right here. So we're going to make 8 of those, and 2 of them get sewn together to create our side units. Okay, once we get those created, then we're all set. So let's go make a cat's cradle. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to start out, all the directions on the cat's cradle for cutting are on the cat's cradle ruler. Oh, sorry. Okay, so all the markings for the cat's cradle are on the cat's cradle ruler, and closer. You have an angle. Oh, sorry, like that? Okay, perfect. So we're looking at the 3-inch finish because those are the size of our blocks, and we're going to read over. We need to cut 2 2.25, and this is all in the directions. So all the, excuse me, all the measurements are right here on the ruler for you. Okay. The ruler, wow. The ruler also shows you where to mark your, closer up. Okay. Show you where to, sorry, mark your blocks. They show you where to trim your blocks, and again where to place your blocks for perfect trimming on the cat's cradle itself. So let's get started. We have, we're going to take our 2.25 by 3.25 and add our 2.25 squares to the bottoms of each of these. So I'm just going to chain piece these 2 together, and this will go pretty quickly, hopefully. Okay. So we're just going to sew these on, and we're going to press everything to the rectangle. So we'll take these 2. take these over and press them to the rectangle. And then we're going to sew them again. So if I'm pressing toward the rectangle shape is on the top. So give it a little bit of heat and press it right to the rectangle. Bit of heat. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to sew these two pieces together, but with the oranges in the opposite corners. Okay, try not to flip your seams that you've just done. So I'm going to line these right up on top of each other and sew another 1/4 of an inch. Okay, remember when I said press to the rectangle? Well, we need to press this to the rectangle as well. But if I open this up, I can't press this to the rectangle and this to the rectangle. I'll get a little twist right here. So what we need to do is take a little snip into the seam allowance to allow this seam and this seam to lay nice and flat. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And press it one more time. Okay. So now this seam's going to lay nice and flat this way, and I'm pressing this one toward the rectangle. So you see that there's like a little bit of a clip right here in that seam to allow this to get pressed to the rectangle and that one. All right. So the next thing we want to do is mark our sewing lines. So we're going to take the cat's cradle ruler and we're going to place it where it says mark the sewing line. So here it says place on the seam line. So So we're going to take our square and we're going to take where our seam was. It's hard to see because it's blue right here, but we're going to place that right into that mark on the ruler, and we're going to mark a line going straight across. All right, so I have to put this down for a sec. Sorry. And that will intersect right at that point where we want to sew. So let me take my friction pen, and we're going to mark it all the way across. This is marking our sewing line. We're going to turn it. We're going to do the exact same thing, placing it on the seams. Boy, that laid is something, huh? And again, marking it along here. Once we get our two lines marked, one on this corner and one on this corner, we're going to place it right sides together on our green. Right here. So now we're going to take this back over to the sewing machine and we're going to sew right on our line, hitting that intersection and sewing right off, and again on that side. So okay. So I'm sewing right on the line, trying not to flip my seams. I'm going to hit that point of that corner and continue to sew right on the line. Okay, flip it around, and I'm going to do the other side. All these triangles, and I have not cut a single triangle, which is okay with me. Okay, so the next thing we want to look at is the 1/4 inch seam allowance. So on this ruler, both sides of this ruler have what's called a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay. And they also have, because it's a creative grid, they also have the grips on the 1/4 inch seam allowance side. So you can use either one of these sides. And what we're going to do is put that sew line, the one that we made with our friction pen and the one we sewed on the black line, and we're going to cut a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so let's do that. So I'm taking my line on my ruler. Here's my line I just sewed, and I'm going to place the black line on that line, and here is my 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it's as simple as just trimming this side and doing the same thing to this one. Placing the black line on my friction line, on my sew line, and then trimming. So you have a little bit of extra between them. Okay, oops. All right, so now what we're going to do is press these. See, we already have a cat's cradle. So what we're going to do is press these toward the green, and then we're going to trim them right down to size. So again, if we want to press toward the green goes on top. I give it just a little bit of heat and hold it. Okay. A little bit of heat. Open it up, and look how close that got. Pretty. Look at this one better. All right? Okay, so now we need to trim these because they're oversized. So let's go back to the ruler. One more marking on this ruler will show where to cut these. So now I'm at the one that says trim to size. I don't know if I should turn it this way or not. Okay. So the one that says trim to size, and in this month's block, we are looking for the one that says 3 inches. So it's 1, 2, 3, the 4th square in says 3 inches. And the diagonal line that's attached to the point of that 3 inch is going to go along the diagonal line between the green and the cream of our cat's cradle. So let me show you with the So I always like to trim around the orange square first. So we're going to line up this number 3 with the edges of our orange square, and this diagonal line, see, I'll push it up a little bit, this diagonal line is going to be right on between our green and our cream. So what that does is it squares up one side, and when I trim it over here, I'm going to get equal parts of both cream and green when I flip it around. So let's line it up, line up the dotted line, and give it a trim. Remember, we're working on the 3 inch because we want a finished 3 inch cat's cradle. Okay, so once I have this, I'm going to turn it around. I'm going to use the same markings to trim the other side. So this time, again, I'm looking for where the 3 intersects with this diagonal line going across my cat's cradle. I also have one more diagonal line that I can actually line up straight down into the corner of the one I just trimmed. So I know that this is going to be a very accurate 3.5 when I'm done. Okay? So let's give this a trim, and I'll do it one more time with the other one. All right. So I start with the corner, I put it in the 3 mark, I line up my dotted line along my seam, and I line up the 3 along my square and give it a trim. Flip it around, find my 3, it points right to that intersection right here. This line lines up right with my corner. My diagonal line lines up across my cat's cradle. And again, I have a nice, accurate cat's cradle. But we've taken this one step further. This is a cat's cradle, but there's actually one more thing that we can do to it, and we're going to make a half square triangle on this edge, just to make it mirror the half square triangles that we've done in the corners. So it looks like we have little half squares going around. So what we're going to do is on the 2-inch squares, we're going to draw a diagonal line, and we're going to place our diagonal line in the corner, and we're going to just sew on that line, and we're going to flip that over. Simple as that. Okay, so let's go do that. And then we have our cat's cradle unit. So we'd like to start right up here in the point, right up at the corner, and we're going to come right out that corner, making sure that this square is exactly on the bottom square. Okay, right out to the corner. And again, I am sewing right on the line from corner to corner. Okay, so this will get pressed off to this side, but we need to remove that. You can use your rotary cutter, or I can just trim away the excess. Okay, and we'll press that again toward the outside cream. Okay. So once you have 2 of these cat's cradles made, we need to sew them together to make one unit. So when we're doing that, we have to remember that we want to put a pin in right at that intersection and that intersection of both of our diamond, of our half square triangles, so that they meet right into the middle. All right, so I'm going to close this over, and I'm going to grab a pin. And I'm going to poke my pin through this intersection so that I know where my needle's going to go. So here's my pin there, and I'm going to connect it with that intersection right there. Okay, so now when I sew, I can pull this pin out and my needle will replace it and it will meet where I want it to. Hopefully, that's the all right, so one more thing we're going to sew today. Approaching the pin, I want to hold it away from me, or toward me rather, away from the needle. And as I sew through this, I'm going to replace the pin with the needle of the machine. And then I'll grab these 2 and make sure these are lined up nice and together there. And sew that. And hopefully we have, that's off a little. So I might go back and change that, or I might leave it. It's up to you, whatever you prefer. And these I like to press open, only because there's so much bulk right here. So I will give this a little press open and use this to complete my block. Just finger press it open, and then give it a little bit of heat. Okay. All right, so once we've got these units done, we can go ahead and assemble our block. So we have our corner pieces. Just make sure that they're turned so that these look like little butterflies in the corner. You might have to check them a couple times so that you don't turn them sideways. And then we're just going to put our cat's cradle unit, another 4 patch, and of course we're going to make our center unit, as I talked about earlier, attaching our cat's cradles to the sides of each side of that, and that will be our middle row. And of course we have the same row at the top that we do at the bottom. And it does become a 9 patch if you look at it, but all these are 3 inches. So these all finish at 1.5. Don't be afraid. There's a lot of pieces. Just keep them marked, and pick up your kits on Friday, October 9th. We open at 10 o'clock. Kits will be available for the October 2020 Saturday Sampler. If you have any questions, of course you can call the store, 860-793-6639, and we're here to help you. So happy sewing, and we'll see you next month.